Hey, welcome back to Full Time presented by Amazon Business. I am Tamerra Griffin, and this week category is Pathways. We will be speaking with Lisa Cole not only about her professional pathway beginning with the college game through the birth of the NWSL, literally all around the world, internationally as a coach, and now working with US Women's National Team head coach Emma Hayes as a player pathways scout. To do that, of course, I have to be joined by my co-host Meg Linehan. Meg, how's it going?
It's going well. I'm excited to have Lisa on the show as someone, who
you guys go way back.
Yeah, the WPSL Elite days, which as my role as local historian, the interim league between women's professional soccer, one of the second short-lived professional league, and then NWSL. I mean, Boston Breakers are one of a handful of kind of professional teams that year where, Heather O'Reilly was out here running laps around college kids and then getting swarmed for photos after. But yeah, I mean, Lisa Cole is just someone who, I remember talking to her about her time with Tony DeCicco, right? Legendary head coach of the U.S. Women's National Team who coached them in the 99 World Cup, but also, again, another big Boston Breakers person. But Dr. Colleen Hacker, who was also super influential with the 99 team, very big on the mentality piece of things. And I mean, she even goes back to times with, Leslie Gallimore, who we've had on the show previously, general manager of Seattle Reign. It's a small world, Tamerra, and I think that's going to be the fun part about this conversation.
Yeah, and for me, as someone who's entered this game as a journalist, much more recently, these conversations are always so enriching for me because it really helps me contextualize the moment that we're in right now, the amount of work it took to get here, all of the stuff that happened silently, quietly behind the scenes that we now get to shine even a bigger spotlight on with these platforms that we have. So I am pumped for this very special feature interview. But before we get there, make sure that you are subscribed to our full-time newsletter where you will get this and more about what's going on in the women's game around the world. It's also free, $99, which we love to hear in this economy. Make sure that you also rate and review the show. We love getting 5 stars, just like Esther loves scoring for Gotham. We're going to maybe have to come up with our own special goal celebration too if we're mentioning Esther because she has been killing it. And if you are not on a social media cleanse, make sure that you're following us on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok at TA Full-Time, where we will be posting exclusive videos, things that you won't see anywhere else, clips from the podcast, and much more. All right, Meg and I are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, our conversation with Lisa Cole.
All right, Lisa Cole, thank you for joining the show. How are you today?
Yeah, really good. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
I'm very excited. Just, we have obviously gone back to some Boston Breakers days. But before we go down memory lane, first, can we just start off with what your current role is with the U.S. Women's National Team for those who maybe haven't been following all of the hirings across the board? It's been so exciting to see you at U.S. National Team games when we've been there. Yeah. But, what's the role right now?
Outside of camp, I have direct responsibilities with basically our player pathway. So I'm the one, not the only one, watching games. We have our whole staff watching games. We're tracking players, but I'm the one that kind of coordinates to make sure we're watching the right players at the right time. And so that'd be my main responsibility outside of camp. And then inside of camp, I just act as an assistant coach, helping Emma and Denise with whatever they need on the pitch. I'm usually up above during games, and I assist with warm-up and things like that. So, yeah, getting a bit of the scouting and the on the pitch, ability too. So it's been really fun for me to be in that role, both to see what's happening with the future players, but also to see our current players have success.
And Lisa, we are talking both about your role as a player pathway scout and also your pathway individually across your career. So I would like to request now a rewind and find out just a bit of your background and how you arrived where you are now.
I've always wanted to be a coach, so even when I was growing up, I was coaching. So I started coaching pretty young age before I even got into college. Throughout college, I used it as an opportunity to make a job. So I coached in middle school. I coached at the FC Royals when that was a thing before they merged with the boys club. I worked camps for Tony Waiters and Tony DeChico and Greg Ian out in the Northwest. So I just always knew I wanted to be in coaching even after I was done playing, because you didn't really see a pathway to play, really, so coaching was going to be the next best thing after I finished up college. That was kind of my intro into the game, and I was lucky to have people like Jan Smizik and Debbie Barlow. I had some women that were there as well, and then I was really fortunate to get Dr. Colleen Hacker as a college coach. So I'm lucky to have her really be like, this is a pathway you can go into, and Leslie Gallimore, obviously, in Seattle area too. So it just seemed all possible. And then I met Tony DeChico, which was who really set off my career and helped me get into the right rooms, really helped my education in and around the game, and I think made me the coach I am today. So yeah, I got really lucky in like my pathway to being a coach, but I always had that. I knew I wanted to be a coach. It just, how was I going to get there? And I never expected to be there at this level. Meeting Tony DeChico, which Colleen Hacker made that introduction, was probably what really set off my career. And then his faith in me as an assistant coach when he went into the pro game, and his faith in me when like my career as a college coach didn't go well. As you ran into some of those obstacles, he just really helped pick me up in the right moments. So I was able to, I guess what I would call bounce from one job to, okay, that didn't work out, but what were the reasons? And then how do you move forward and turn it into a positive? So yeah, and then so I've been a bit of everywhere. I've coached at every level. My first international job was in 2016 with Papua New Guinea. They were hosting the U20 World Cup. Then I went to Antigua and Barbuda after that, and Fiji, and then Zambia most recently before joining the U.S. So that's kind of my pathway. But I started in youth, went to the college game, did a little bit of semi-pro, did professional soccer with the Boston Breakers, and then a couple stints with 2 other NWSL teams, and then into the international game. So been really fortunate to coach across the levels and across the world.
Wow. So I was sort of compiling a mental CV as you were describing your background, and I think I ended at like page 5, and that was trying to summarize everything still. So what a wealth of experience, so many dimensions, so many places geographically, so many levels of the game. I am really eager to get your thoughts on how you've seen the game grow. And I guess specifically within the NWSL, a lot of changes as you have sort of been building your career. So what are the things that sort of stand out the most to you in terms of the shifts and the transformations of the women's game in the U.S.?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I started actually, my first coaching job was in WPS. So I was there for that whole shift. And, my first job almost as a head coach, I ran the draft because Tony had stepped away. I ran the draft, and then I had to call players. So I did that in January, and I called players in March and tell them that there's not going to be a league. Like that immediately was like one of my first big responsibilities as a head coach, and it was devastating. I'm trying within the window to try to get Alyssa Nair over to Germany, which we were able to do. And like you're just scrambling to make sure players had a place. And for the players that didn't, I don't know if you guys remember, we did that WPSL Elite.
I very much remember.
And then that kind of led into what is now the NWSL. So I feel like really fortunate to have been part of NWSL's early days and being someone that was like hitting the hammer against people's heads, like, guys, we have to do this. We have to get this started, and it can't wait another 3 years, 5 years, or we're going to lose this whole generation of players. And so NWSL started really lean and mean, I think, to be honest, and we saw that in just some of the ways those teams were operated there. You know, I wasn't just coaching. I love the fact now. I was like, man, you just have to coach. You don't have to do scouting. I mean, I was doing laundry at one point in time because that's what needed to be done on the road. So you just were like, okay, I can run my staff ragged, or I need to pick up this piece or that piece. So I think the league is in a tremendous place right now, and I think it's at a real jumping off point, to be honest, to really take another step forward. Because there's those 3 to 5, I think everybody was like, okay, let's get past year 5, or even year 3, because that tended to be when the leagues folded. So you get to year 5, then you get year 10, and now you're like, okay, this is on solid footing. You know, we've got good ownership groups within it. We've got a much bigger league office than we've had in the past. I'm really excited about the fact that, you know, coaches in the league today get to be coaches, and they have the support staff in and around them, and the players have what they need for the most part. I know we're still having some clubs catch up, but the new ownership groups have come in and really drive change to be like, hey, let's get this to a really high level. So I'm excited about the future of NWSL. We're really excited about what is possible and the conversations that are happening in and around U.S. soccer and the league together to grow the game here domestically.
Lisa, I do want to talk to you about coaching and female coaches in the NWSL, because I remember year 1, 2013, it was you know, Cindy Parlow-Cohen, Laura Harvey, like there were women around. We've seen that rate fluctuate so much, and I feel like after some of the more recent hires this offseason especially, right, there were a lot of women the last couple of years in coaching roles across the league. As of right now, it's back down to 2 out of 14. Every time I get asked to write about coaching, I go back to an interview that you did with Steph Young, who used to be with us at The Athletic, and just saying, you know, women get hired differently than men. You get less time on the job. If something goes wrong, you're slower to get rehired. Do you feel like things have changed? Do you feel like that fundamental situation is still there, or have you seen improvements over the past decade?
I mean, there's been some really good improvements. I think Jill Ellis's scholarship, which allows women to get their licenses, take off some of the burden of that financially for them. There's good mentorship programs, which she believes, and some of these other programs. So I think there are some things happening that are helping open the door for women. But when we look at head coaching jobs, for whatever reason, everybody's willing to hire that assistant coach who's a female coach or who's a young pro coming out of the game. You know, we have Michelle Betos, Kelly Rowland, and Barney all being goalkeeper assistant coaches now in the league. So that they've created that position to keep them in the game and to start their coaching journey. I think that's great. But when it comes to head coaching and leadership positions within the league or within specifically coaching, I think it's still difficult. There's only 2, like the fact that there's still only 2. You know, is at least there were 3 when I was coaching, is the testament to that there needs to be more work done, for sure. And I think we lean towards hiring men for whatever reason in those leadership positions, and that needs to change because there's definitely plenty of good young women, people like myself and Denise Reddy. You know, we for forever we couldn't get jobs back into the league, so we had to take different paths. And I don't know why that quite is, but it just has been a bit difficult for women to go back into the NWSL, where men seem to revolve around the league for whatever reason.
Yeah, and to sort of chip away at that question of why, which is multi-layered, it's systemic, it's historical, Lisa, I'm wondering if we can sort of return to the topic of pathways, but this time specifically for female coaches. How would you sort of assess the state of the pathway that a woman can take if she wants to become a head coach? Have you seen any changes there in terms of that?
Well, I think this has been interesting because I think right now the top female coaches in the U.S. are still in the college game. And probably because that's where there's money, that's where there's a little bit more longevity. And now you're seeing the NWSL start to pay coaches reasonably, start to have healthcare attached to what you're doing. I mean, probably shouldn't say this, but I've never had
Say it.
healthcare attached to a job that I've had in women's professional soccer until now. So you know what I mean? Like, so you're making sacrifices, and especially if you want to have a family on top of that, like going and being a pro coach hasn't really been realistic for a lot of women for whatever reasons. And so I think taking down some of those barriers has been critical. I think getting good young female coaches, I look at like not even young, like Yolanda Thomas, who's at Orlando. I mean, her resume speaks for itself. She should be the next pro coach hire. Like I don't know why they're not looking there. They're not like looking in their own league to say who are the people that are doing well. You've got Bev and Carm and Louisville, and yeah, they're doing things with less resources, but that's what women have to do. They have to take that job rather than the top job because they haven't been looked at in the same way. So I think the pathway, part of it is opening access to education. There's only 12 pro licenses offered right now in the U.S. Across the board, men and women. So you're talking about 12 opportunities for coaches each year. So that's not enough for the men, let alone getting women involved there. So there has to be a way that we create that pathway so that women are eligible. Because if we don't have it on our resume, we're not going to apply. If it says, you have to have a pro license, well, every man's going to apply even though they have their B license because they're like, I could do that. But women aren't going to do it unless we're overqualified. So we need to eliminate that barrier in education. And then I think it's continuing to take down some of the barriers that come in relation to being a mom and coaching. I think Emma's doing a great job of that, like watching her navigate having Harry on the road and when's it appropriate to have him there, when do we need to focus on the team, how can she balance both, and how the players have been able to do that as well, be moms and be players. So I think we care about that. Women care about that. They don't want to miss their children's childhood, so I think that's important. And I think for men it's opened up doors too, because why did Tony get out of coaching originally? To go back and spend time with his family. So it's not just a barrier women have, but we definitely avoid getting into the game at the same level, I think, because of those barriers and societal expectations in that way.
Yeah.
So the pathway... Yeah, I don't know that the pathway's gotten better, but there have been some good movements to try to fix that. And I hope that you'll see that continue. Emma wants to do some things in and around just the women's game. I mean, I haven't been on a coaching course yet except for when I'm coaching courses with Tony when he previously, because every single video they put up on a coaching course is the men's game. And I coach the very, very top level of the women's game. We don't want to talk about the women winning. Instead, I'm watching, no offense to our U.S. men in CONCACAF rather than watching the U.S. women in a World Cup. And we're comparing their games and what players do there and what are the trends in the game, which is more researched in the men's side. So, yeah, I think making slow gains. But
yeah. No, I mean... Lisa, I have like 17 different questions I want to go off of this whole conversation, but let's put a pin in Emma because we're definitely going to come back to that. And, just having sat through the women's national team way presentation a couple of times now, I think there's a lot to dig into there. But I want to take a step back too, because I feel like we keep hearing from the players, listen, we want the best coach available. And I 100% understand that, right? And when teams are going through interview processes and they've got, in theory, this balanced and diverse pool of candidates, what I think I've been struggling with as this conversation has gone on over a couple of years is I think it's a lot easier for men to become the best possible candidate in a pool, whereas for women, there is still maybe this barrier to education. You need time, you need experience, right? Like I think about Angela Salem, Yolanda Thomas, to your point, Carm Moscato. Like there are all of these assistant coaches who have been kind of floating around in this pool. And the question for me is if they are actually compared against a male assistant coach, right, in the NWSL game, have they been given that same pathway to be the best possible candidate in a pool? And, or, are there as many of them to be like picked from in a pool. So do you think that's also a piece of this conversation, in addition to breaking down some of these barriers, is how do we like ramp up the time element of this too, even? Can we?
Yeah, I think that's part of it, but if you look at how NWSL is hired, it's actually been really interesting if you just go back and look. Like, teams, for whatever reason, do we really go after the best candidates? Because I think sometimes we just keep what's already there. So, like, if you look at how people have gotten hired, and this will probably get myself in trouble, but if you look at how people have gotten hired, is that they have been an assistant, or in some cases they've been a volunteer assistant, that then the assistants leave, so then now all of a sudden they're interim, and then all of a sudden, the players like them for 3 games or 5 games or whatever, and we just hire them. And then on top of that, we hire them, and then we wonder why they fail a year later. Because you're putting someone who is a volunteer coach, then maybe an assistant for 6 months, and then now all of a sudden is your head coach, and you're going, okay, well, they just didn't get it done. I hired that woman, and she just didn't get it done. Well, of course she didn't. She wasn't ready for that position. You put her in the position too early, or you skip steps. And we've done it with men, too, to be honest, to be fair. And some of them have stuck longer. I think, again, I go back to men getting to have longer chances. A woman starts to fail, and immediately they start to look somewhere else. See, she's not getting it done. Where like a guy's like, okay, let's go have a conversation with him. Let's get the boys together and see if we can rally this or whatever. But that just doesn't happen once a female coach is starting to slide. So I would just look at overall, like NWSL needs to do a better job in how they get to their head coaches. Because if they did a better process of saying, okay, what are the things that are important to us? What are the things we want to have in that? And they do a real search process, I think they would end up with different names. And I think what has happened is the easy thing to do is to go and hire someone from overseas and be like, oh, that's a big name grab. People be excited. Oh, he's from Barcelona, or he's from here, or he's from there. Rather than saying, okay, let's take a chance on somebody that is, local, or somebody that maybe has less of a name, but they have all the right things in place, like a Yolanda, or I just think that how the hiring process is happening. I often wonder, like, what's happening with the teams. And I've been in a lot of calls. Most clubs call me when they have a job opening. They call me, and then we have a nice chit chat and conversation. They ask me about being a sporting director, maybe, or something. But I never get and I always tell them, but I want to be on the pitch, so I want to be a coach. So then they come around to that coaching side of things, and they, for whatever reason, would rather have a guy on the pitch, on the sideline. So, I think it's changing our hiring practices. It's looking at standards to make sure that women are looked at in every job opportunity. And I think that it's clubs maybe doing a rethink about like how they go through that process when they do fire a coach. That they don't just stick with the short-term solution. There may be some times where that's the right answer, but have they looked other places first? And I think if they did that, they would find that there's places and people in place, women in place that are ready.
Whew, so many gems to take notes on for people who are listening and are in positions of power to maybe make these changes. But it's always fascinating to see sort of the limits of people's sense of comfort, because what I'm hearing from what you're saying, Lisa, is that people need to get uncomfortable. Going with what you know is easy. Easy is comfortable, and comfortable means the status quo is just going to be maintained. Nothing will change. And whenever we reach these kind of plateaus, to me, it means that people are not ready to be uncomfortable. But let's step aside from the NWSL and look at U.S. soccer. What do you see happening within the federation to improve this coaching ecosystem that maybe might influence or trickle down to the NWSL?
Well, I think some of the things that we're talking about, maybe I was never a fan of female-specific, like, coach education courses. I was like, I'm going to work in a male-dominated world, so I should be prepared to work in a male-dominated world. So I always enjoyed doing my coach education in and around those spaces, but I'm not everybody. So I do think sometimes, especially for young women getting in, some of the comments that they have happen towards them or whatever just make the workplace environment not where they want to be. That entry point needs to be better so that we can keep good people in coaching. We need to have some people make it. Like, it's great that Laura Harvey's still around and been coaching for as long as she's been in the league. Beb's fairly new. Denise and I both struggled, like, to be quite frank, like, to get back into the league after we didn't have success in our first go around. And I would say, so why would you want to take that risk when other good people haven't made it? I think so they have to see somebody break down that barrier, hopefully preferably American women break down that barrier. No offense to our English counterparts because they've done great, but yeah, I even look at our youth system right now and who our WNT and YNT coaches are a lot of times, and we just tend to go and look overseas for all of those solutions. So for me, that's the key, is that we start to create opportunities for young women that give them some opportunity to see what it looks like at a higher level. And then when they're ready, that we open the doors for them to get into their pro. Right now, you have to already be coaching in the professional league to get into your pro license, but you can't coach professionally without the pro license.
Just love a little conundrum to go with everything.
So, and it's a problem, and I know U.S. Soccer's working on it, but they're just trying to catch up with what the demands are across the men's game, the women's game. I think having the Super League has been tremendous because that's going to open up opportunities for women to coach in that environment. I think having the Canadian League join, they've done a good job hiring women into leadership positions. So I'm interested to see how that goes, and I'm hoping they get to stick for their first year. Give somebody 2 years to really put their stamp on something. We all know that coaching, you don't get it all right in that first year. So I think that's really important. And then having that Super League where maybe it's a little bit less stress, but still being able to perform in a professional environment, put a team together, do all that kind of stuff, I think will lead to more opportunities for women, because in the end, it's all about opportunities. If you don't have the opportunities, you can't have the experience. If you don't have the experience, you can't get the job. So it's all about all those things.
Lisa, there's a theme that I think you keep hitting on, and one that I think every coach is probably intimately familiar with, and that is everything isn't going to go right in this role, right? And it's a super public role. You have to be comfortable with failure. How do you, just even personally as your own time with a coach, how do you take failure on board and harness that energy rather than letting it kind of derail what you could go on to then achieve in your next role?
Yeah, I've been lucky actually. Twice in my career I've been fired. Emma and I laugh about this too. Like, you're not really a professional coach or a coach at a high level until you've been fired. I was let go from a job in the college game where the athletic director just changed. So, I was in a place where I was like, oh, this is going to work. I could be here forever. I love this place. We're really building something. And then the leadership changed. And then as soon as the leadership changed, I was like, oh, this is miserable. But I was going to try to stick it out because I finally got my head coaching job. I'm finally doing what I want to do. But the match was wrong. I needed to get out of there. The best thing that happened to me probably was getting fired from that position or let go. And it took a little while to realize that. But then that's where I was like, wait a second, I don't really like the college game because you're not on the field enough. I'm not with players enough. And so that's where I really started to dive into the international game and semi-professional and pro game at the time. And so I really was like, okay, this is what I should be doing. This is where my passion lies. And then in my first year as a head coach at Boston, I get fired with 4 games left in the playoff hunt. Has nothing to do with coaching. Has everything to do with what they wanted to do in the youth game. Because I was also the technical director. They wanted to go this way in the youth game. I wanted to go this way in the youth game. So it didn't even have anything to do with my coaching. And so sometimes you just have to realize that it's not you. There were things I could have done to probably keep my job. I should have been a bit more political and different things. I should have been paying attention to some of the things, side conversations that were happening. But I was in the playoff hunt, so I didn't care. I was like focused on the team and what we were doing. So there were lessons to be learned in that experience, but also like I'm a coach. Wow, I should get fired for coaching reasons, you know. So that would never happen to a guy. I don't think he's on the playoff hunt and gets fired. Like I just don't think that would have happened. Laura Harvey that year finished, I think, like last in the league and got a contract extension. I was like, what's going on here? But the truth is it just wasn't the right fit, was it? At the end of the day, like Seattle was prioritizing Laura's development and was being committed to her because they knew they had someone good in her and they just needed to give her time with the team. And Boston was looking at that time at short-term gains and how do we make money in youth soccer and things like that. So it ultimately is a good thing because it just wasn't the right fit. So I think that's what you have to do when you have those really hard moments is to look at like what's on you, because there definitely were things that were on me, but also look about the environment and say, well, there were things there also that I could have. I actually they asked me to interview for the Seattle job, and I said no. I'm from Kent, Washington. I said no because I'm going to be loyal to Boston. So, yeah, you learn those things as you go. Like ultimately, it's a business, and you really need to. You just need to make sure you find the right fit. Sometimes you're going to be in the wrong place, and the sooner you recognize that you're in the wrong place, get out of there, because otherwise they're going to kick you out at some point. They're gonna also recognize you're in the wrong place and it doesn't suit your values.
Sage advice. Lisa, you've mentioned Emma Hayes a few times. We are very curious to know what your relationship is like, and specifically where you found like the strongest sense of alignment in terms of your visions for the U.S. women's national team system, especially in this role that you're in now, scouting for, player pathways.
Yeah, I think, Emma and I have known each other since those days. We both, when I was at UConn as an assistant coach, she was at Iona. Amanda Vanderhoor, who is with Super League now, like her and Emma were best friends. They always roomed together. And, we would share tips. We worked ODP with Sue Ryan, so we bonded in that way that you do when you're like, looking around and there's not that many women around and you're like, okay, who are the people that I want to stick with? And then Emma was in Chicago when I was in Boston with Tony in WPS. And so we just kept a friendship going. Like even when she got fired, her first year at Chelsea, I went over and spent a little bit of time with her as she was building out that project. And then in between all my pauses, that's what I call them now, in between all my pauses and jobs, I almost always go and spend time with Emma. So I'd find time to get there. Love her family, just good people. And I think we've just shared, similar like struggles and moments in time. And for me, I just really, really, every time you're in and around, you guys know this, anytime you're in and around Emma, there's an energy there. She's funny. But she also wants to conquer the world. And she's like, we're not going to let these things stand in our way. And we're going to do things this way and because this is the right way to do it. And, I'm really proud of what she was able to build at Chelsea and really excited to be able to go on this journey with her with the U.S. because I think she's going to, win, obviously, like we were able to do in the Olympics. But I think she's also going to leave a real legacy. And for me, that's the most important thing. I think being somebody from Tony DeChico's kind of legacy, I think that was the biggest thing. Like he touched people in a way that improved them. So whether they were youth coaches or whether they were admins or media people or whatever, he was able to leave something that made the game better and made people better. And I think his impact's still out there. I think Emma is one of those people too. Like her impact is not going to just be on, the 23 players we have on our roster during this period of time or whatever. Like she's going to make sure that we really impact what U.S. soccer's doing and that it's in a really thoughtful way.
I mean, Lisa, I feel like we could make a pretty similar argument about you about having that sort of influence, right? Like you might have been kind of a little more under the radar than Tony DeChico or Emma Hayes, right? But there is this sense of you've touched so many different programs. I mean, whether it's the influence with Zambia players coming to the NWSL even, right? Like you've been a builder, maybe a little bit more behind the scenes, but how do you handle that part of your reputation? Like, you get phone calls when there are job openings. How do you want to use that legacy that you have been building through the course of your career to help grow the landscape across the US?
Well, I just hope that it comes to a place where it's easier. Like, I always think about, like, I'm not here without some of the people that have been in my life. Tony, Colleen, like I could name 20 people that have impacted me in really significant ways. And I just want to look back, and whenever that moment happened for a player, like these Zambian players right now, like how can you not see the talent in that group? I mean, and then I got to experience it live, and I could see the challenges that they were having and the environment that wasn't safe for them, and they just keep going, they keep playing, they keep winning, and they just needed one person to be able to say, yes, take the risk on them. And I think I'm happy that I was able to be that for some of them, to get some of these coaches to be like, okay, is this really worth it? Like, they're not going to turn into a flop. And I think they're proving, like, they did that. They were ready for that. All I did was give them a thumbs up on the review process. So for me, that's like easy and really, really gratifying. I love seeing them find success. That's all we all really need, whether it's in your field or in somebody else's field, is somebody giving you that first interview, or somebody giving you that first chance, and somebody giving you first pro contract so you can go do something remarkable. And yeah, to be honest, that's what I think. Like, if I had to be in the press all the time, I think it'd be a bit draining. I think for me that the rewarding pieces actually are those things, like getting to show up at a game and seeing I'm in Bay Area for a visit, Rachel's smile. Like, yeah, that's all I need, really. Like, that to me is really, really rewarding. I still keep in touch with the Fijian players, and a lot of them are coaching now and really making an impact in their environment. And I think that's the biggest thing, is when you look at Antigua, all the youth coaches now are former players that were there when I was there. I think that's what you just have to leave wherever you are a better place, and people, women specifically, empowered to keep I go in and do like the hard work, like pound the heads, and then I walk away and everything takes off usually. That's kind of how I think. I'm like the bricklayer in some ways.
I mean, that sounds like a dream job. And, you mentioned gratification. That's the word that came to my mind, too, just throughout this conversation. How gratifying it must feel to have played a hand in planting so many seeds in so many different programs around the world, and to see them sprout, to see them grow, to see them reach even beyond maybe what you thought. I can only imagine. And to still be in the process, trying to continue leaving the game better than you found it. What an experience this must be. And it's not even over yet. So, Lisa, we have so enjoyed this conversation. So many points that we could unpack into whole other episodes. I would love to have you back personally, because there's just so much. What an enriching conversation. Thank you so much for your time. This was great.
No, really. Thank you guys. I always am excited when I get a chance to talk to you guys. I know both of you as well have been on the forefront of growing the women's game, so I really appreciate your contributions also to the game.
Whew, what a conversation that was. I mean, just from the first question that she answered, Meg, I was like, okay, so we're going to have to invite her back for another episode that talks specifically about this, about the pathways, about her experience, early NWSL days, WPS, like she's like a walking encyclopedia, which I often say about you too, but to hear it from the perspective of someone who has served almost every possible coaching role that exists or has existed. So much to think about. What stood out the most to you, though, Meg, as someone who has known her for a long time?
Yeah. Also, just like, imagine, that's the first head coach I ever had to cover. So, like,
Full circle
definitely
moment.
blessed on that front, just to like be able to pick her brain at any given time back in Boston days. But yeah, I mean, I think the part that I have been thinking about over this past week, really, since writing about the pathways for female coaches, especially in the NWSL, again, I always reference what Lisa Cole said a few years ago. And so I think getting that updated kind of input on education is such a key piece of this, right? And I think that has always been such a massive ingredient for future success. But I mean, for me, it's the fact that only 12 pro license spots open up every year and they have to go to both men and women. That is definitely one of those things where now I'm like, okay, that's going to be like living in the back of my brain every time I read about coaching programs with U.S. soccer, because you think about the growth of the women's game, they're going to have to figure out a better way forward just to make sure that people are able to get the licenses that they need.
100%. And sort of jumping off from that, the benefits that are provided or not provided to coaches, even once they step into these roles, and how that specifically can impact female coaches, whether they have aspirations of starting a family one day, whether they have aspirations of having, God forbid, a healthy work-life balance, which doesn't even affect necessarily only women. You know, she mentioned Tony as being affected by that as well. It was interesting to hear sort of like the confrontation of whether it's U.S. soccer or NWSL, how things have gone and what was not addressed, and how that ended up keeping people out of opportunities that they might have otherwise pursued. When I think about pathways, it's those details that if you're not accustomed to having to think about those things, which often is the case for people in these powerful decision-making positions, you're not going to even think about changing it. But over time, that is how things get normalized. And that's how these sort of systemic exclusions happen. So I was really, really happy to hear her be so candid about that. But of course, as someone who has seen these things happen repeatedly and knows how much talent exists compared to how little opportunity that talent has to really thrive.
Yeah, I mean, I think about the childcare stuff too, you know, that getting written into the collective bargaining agreements for both the U.S. women's national team and the U.S. men's team, and Walker Zimmerman talking about like, oh, I get to have my kid at camp now, right? If you build in these additional protections or these additional benefits, it only benefits everyone. And sometimes I do kind of wish that we could all take a step back and be like, look at this logical thinking and what it provides us. Who knew?
Seriously. And I mean, we hear so often that women, and I mean, Lisa, of course, expounded on this as well, the different ways that they're treated in hiring processes, things that a woman can say that maybe sound provocative. I mean, she mentioned, I'm going to get in trouble saying this, which of course made us wanted her to say it that much more. But it's not that hard to think about how those things can land in an interview process if a woman is saying it versus a man, how differently we receive these things and react to them. And that's before you even get on the pitch. I mean, I've had so many conversations with female head coaches and Black head coaches of all genders who say similar things. I mean, this is both about gender, it's about race, it's about people who are historically marginalized, stepping out and speaking up and making people uncomfortable, as we talked about, and how differently that is received, whether you have privilege, relative, or not. And these are the things also that, again, if you're not used to looking out for those things, if you've never actually had to have the courage to do some of that work, you're not going to think about changing it, which is why I think it's so, so, so important that we elevate these conversations with folks like Lisa, especially because she's not afraid to say it, which so much respect.
Yeah, I mean, we honestly need more honest conversations like the one that we just had. And I do think that, you know, making sure that people don't feel like there's going to be like some terrible repercussion because they said it like it is, right? You know, rather than being political, right? Because I think that there's a way to have real critique and real like constructive criticism in this space to make things better. And, you know, to our earlier conversation, it does kind of feel like Emma Hayes is at least bringing that energy into the U.S. ecosystem. So exciting to see that at least.
100%. And how nice to be co-conspirators again at this level. I can only imagine so many full circle moments with you and Lisa, with Lisa and Emma. It feels like only good things can come from that. More discomfort, but the right kind, you know? Great conversation. and I think that's our show. I mean, I'm afraid to even broach another topic because there's so much more that we could say, but hopefully we can just have Lisa back. All right. Did you know that The Athletic has partnered with Yahoo Sports to provide free best-in-class coverage of women's sports? If not, make sure you visit the Women's Sports Hub at sports.yahoo.com/women-sports. I'm getting better. Haven't memorized it yet and won't, but it's rolling off the tongue better. The link for that is in the show notes. All right, this has been Full Time. I am Tamerra Griffin, and I'm honestly going to be processing that conversation, probably with a nice, refreshing beverage on Blue Sky and Instagram.
I am Meg. You can also find me on Blue Sky and Instagram. And of course, don't forget you can follow the show at TA Fulltime on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube.
Yes, reach out to us. I hope that you all enjoyed that conversation as much as we did, and we want to hear your thoughts. This show is not possible without podcast producer Theo Lloyd Hughes, video producer Leah Griffin, and executive producer Emily Olson. We appreciate you all so much, as always, for listening, and we'll see you next time.